The practice of collaborative writing, which refers to two or more people working together to produce a document of which all members are responsible, is not new in the second language classroom. Yet, the inclusion of social technologies in the second language classroom, technologies such as wikis, Facebook, Twitter, blogs, has likely increased the presence of collaborative writing in our instructional practices. This collaborative approach to second language writing fits with the 21st century view of learning as a social endeavor, expanding experiences and exposing students to social contexts different from their own. This does not mean that individual writing is not relevant. Opposite, writing on our own will always have value, but the relationship between new technologies, social media, and collaborative writing is creating some exciting possibilities in L2 teaching and learning. Not only does this linkage produce an ideal environment for the co-construction of knowledge, it also regards students as agents of their own learning and leads us away from the notion that the instructor must be the sole deliverer of content. At this point, we need to recognize that while digital tools emphasize the social aspects of writing, not all of them are equally suitable for collaborative writing. We have email, online forums, blogs, wikis, chats, Twitter, Facebook. If we could express the affordances, which are the actions that we can perform with these tools, we could see that emails, online forums, and blogs involve and demonstrate the writing ability of the individual writer. Wikis and Google Docs, on the other hand, allow participants to work together on the same document, thus supporting collaborative writing. Common to all the tools is that they entail multiple computer-mediated or digitally device-mediated written interactions that allow students to focus on the written discourse while keeping in mind the target audience. From all these tools, perhaps the one that we associate more with collaborative writing are wikis and Google Docs. These applications facilitate authoring flexibility, content creation, and the generation of new knowledge. Further, if we integrate audio applications such as online chats, the level of interactivity and accountability of the participant increases. A question that remains to be answered, however, is the extent to which collaborative writing and the use of these tools helps learners in their writing. Before we move on, we need to know what we mean by collaborative writing. This is a question that researchers and educators have been pondering and are still pondering about. We need to distinguish between collaboration, when students engage with one another in the writing act, and cooperation, when students simply work on their own assigned tasks when contributing to a written text. Storch has provided the most concrete explanation of collaboration. For that, she follows Demons and Phelps' concepts of equality, and here we are talking about the equal distribution of tasks, equal contribution, equal degree of control over the task direction, and mutuality, and here we talk about peer engagement with each other's contribution. Based on the degree of equality or mutuality, Storch identified 4 distinctive dyadic relationships. Collaborative refers to high quality and high mutuality, and is when students participate in the development of the task and provide each other with comments. The second one would be expert-novice, and this refers to low equality and high mutuality. In this case, the expert takes the leading role and guides and motivates the novice to be part of the task. The third example would be, or case, would be dominant-dominant, high equality and low mutuality. Students participate in the development of the task, but do not engage with each other's contributions. And the fourth case would be dominant-passive, which would be low equality and low mutuality. In this case, one student takes or is granted control of the task, and the other student takes a more passive role. According to Storch, students who show a collaborative orientation, whether in a collaborative or an expert-novice pattern of interaction, demonstrate more learning scenarios than the pairs who present dominant-dominant or dominant-passive patterns. In terms of digital writing, for example, several studies have found that the students tend to cooperate when working on content development, and although most students contributed content, not all participants share the work equally. Once we know the type of interactions we might observe in collaboration, we might also want to ask what factors encourage the different types of interactions. As we might expect, a few of these factors include the DIA's second language proficiency level, the task goals, or task effect. There is also another factor that has been emphasized, the role of the leader, who is in charge of monitoring and facilitating the discussion and writing. In the recent work in wikis, Li and Zhu proposed the need to encourage a reflective and trained leader who can foster collaborative rather than individualistic behaviors. What is interesting is that the role of the leader does not need to be confined to an individual person. Whether in cooperation or, as preferred, in collaboration, the role of the expert can be assumed by different members of the group at different points, drawing on the resources and mutually scaffolding each other as they progress through their writing tasks. As with individual writing, collaborative writing involves not only the act of writing words down, but also the processes that any writer goes through when composing a text: planning, revising, editing, organizing. Yet, there are also qualitative differences between individual and collaborative writing. Research has found that when working individually, students tend to polish their text, and here we are talking about grammar, editing, vocabulary, towards the final draft, generate ideas during the various stages of the writing task, and work on the essay structure throughout the entire writing process. When working collaboratively, however, students prefer to polish their essays during the course of developing multiple drafts. They also rework, refine, and fine-tune the content already written during the revision sessions, and they focus on the essay structure and organization at the beginning, creating useful outlines that guide their work. Collaboratively written texts might also score significantly higher on quality of content than individually written texts, and they are more cohesive and coherent than individually produced text. When we consider theoretical frameworks in the context of digital collaborative writing, we need to acknowledge, as Thorne points out, that advances in technology have led to major shifts in communicative practices. And perhaps because of the collaborative nature of digital writing and the introduction of new tools that make us rethink the writing act, the two most common theoretical frameworks that have underpinned the design of studies in this area have been sociocultural theory and activity theory. Within sociocultural theory, the two central tenets that have been highly influential in the analysis of second language writing with digital tools are mediation and scaffolding. With regard to mediation, sociocultural theory argues that higher forms of mental activity, such as attending, predicting, planning, monitoring, inferencing, are mediated mental activities whose sources are external to the individual, and in which the learner participates through dialogue. The mediation of these cognitive functions occurs using psychological or semiotic tools, such as numbers, symbols, or language, as well as through the use of physical tools or artifacts, such as blogs or wikis. Studies in technology-assisted second language writing have examined how, through collaborative dialogue in wikis and chats, learners assist each other with content development or focus on linguistic forms. With regard to scaffolding, we found that in learner-learner dialogic interactions, second language learners notice discrepancies, control frustration, and pursue identified goals, all features that become visible in the scaffolding process. Activity theory, which holds that cognitive development has cultural and social roots, highlights the dynamic nature of the interrelationships between the various elements of the writing processes. And here we are talking about author, audience, tools, tasks. Activity has been defined as a collective complex systemic formation that has a complex mediational structure and as a form of doing directed to an object. The individual's conscious and unconscious actions directed towards a goal occur at the nexus of three different factors: the available tools and artifacts, which would be the computers, languages, tasks, the community and its understood rules, and here we have the interactions between the instructor and learners in the classroom, and the division of labor and what each student is doing, for example. Blin and Apple studied the role of the artifacts used or created by second language learners and found that the use of the wiki to support a writing task influenced all aspects of the activity, such as the object produced, the set of rules conveyed to the learners, the shared understanding of the task, and the working relationships among participants. What is relevant is that even when instructors and learners share the same goal, the completion of the writing activity, how they set about achieving the goal might differ and to some extent create contradictions or structural tensions within and between activity systems. These contradictions manifest as problems, ruptures, breakdowns, clashes, or disturbances. In our case, actions that deviate from what has been traditionally expected from the writing act or the writing class. However, contradictions do not have to be seen as negative aspects because that generally triggers changes that help learners change their perception of the writing act. As we mentioned before, we have several tools that we can use in the second language writing classroom. Before deciding which tools to choose, the instructor will need to set up the goals, for example, the general statements of what the course or activity is attempting to accomplish, and outcomes, what the student will be able to perform or produce at the end of the course or activity. To ensure successful implementation, the instructor will need a good understanding of the affordances of each particular tool. The characteristics of the selected tool will also dictate the language elements on which the students will focus. Given that we write to communicate meaning, it is not surprising to find that content development is the most prominent component of any writing task independent on the tool that we use. In addition, awareness of an external audience strongly motivates students to focus on content development. For example, studies of the use of blogs in second language writing have emphasized the role of these tools as means of self-reflection and free expression, promoting creativity rather than just the attainment of perfect grammar and spelling. At the same time, the students' experience of personal content creation is enriched by the opinions, advice, and criticism coming from their audience. Another tool that has been employed in the second language classroom has been the online forums, which are spaces in which students can reflect on research information and are ideal venues for content development. The slow pace of the online forums allows students to present individually researched content, yet they discuss collaboratively with other group members who bring different perspectives. When connected to a writing activity, the students will be able to bring a much deeper understanding of the topics to their own essays. Because of their potential to create, transform, and erase learners' work with built-in accountability, Wikis and Google Docs are perhaps the application most commonly used for collaborative writing. The difference between them is that the former is asynchronous while the latter is synchronous. In a wiki, learners provide each other with feedback using a comment function, also asynchronous, while in Google Docs, users can communicate with one another using the synchronous chat feature. Because more than one learner can write and edit the same document, the collaborative nature of these tools seems conducive to content development, whether it involves research into the historical background of a novel, discussion of cultural topics, or elaboration on the content of argumentative, expository essays or annotated bibliographies. Wiki-supported collaborative work also encourages learners to focus effectively on elements of rhetorical structure and organization. At the same time, users have been found to focus on the grammatical accuracy of their own writing or that of their partners. However, other studies have found that second language learners are more concerned with meaning than with form. These mixed results might be due to several factors, including the reluctancy to address their own errors or provide feedback about those of their partner, lack of accuracy as a task criterion in the rubric, an excellent command of the second language, tendency to overlook problems in their partner's writing, reluctancy to correct their partner's error, or task design effects such as group size, language level, assessment issues, or the problem-solving nature of the task. When writing collaboratively, we can use more than one tool. In fact, combining different tools lends itself to catering for individual learning styles, and therefore it can be more conducive to students learning to combine online tools with specific curricular aspects. What is relevant is that a multimodal approach to writing is offered as a part of a structured environment, which should offer a clear sequence of interconnected writing tasks and allow students to build on previous interactive use of social tools. This is important because due to their familiarity with social media, today young students' expertise with social tools does not guarantee that they have the required knowledge to use them in the classroom appropriately. For social tools to add a valuable dimension to the second language writing class, they must be integrated and implemented in a planned manner. They also have to be used as a regular complementary classroom activity. Their use, whether in the classroom or outside the class, needs to be carefully coordinated and planned. For example, when brainstorming a topic, discussion boards or online forums provide students with an asynchronous space where they can post their informed opinions about the essay topics before starting the composing process. Online chats can be a vehicle for meaningful interactions in real time during the work on the composition. Students tend to use chats to address general issues related to genre, structure, and organization. Wikis or Google Docs are good media to choose for pair writing tasks, because these tools allow students continuous access to a document in collaborative production. Another question that we need to ask ourselves is whether students are on board with collaborative writing. While some research highlights minor problems with writing collaboratively, such as unreliable writing partners, overall, students reveal positive attitudes towards the use of collaborative writing. Focusing on issues that concern our students, one problem, for example, is that second language students at the advanced level feel that due to mismatched proficiency levels between partners, issues of grammar could not always be properly addressed. Students might also feel it's difficult to address diplomatically language mistakes to a partner, and sometimes these remain unexplored. Students also prefer writing individually because of time constraints, personal style, and work-pace differences. Yet, despite these issues, and despite the fact that students sometimes lack the time to revise and proofread together their collaborative work, they also realize that their partners identify their mistakes and correct them when revising the text. Overall, students find that writing collaboratively using tools like wikis is best for content development. Through collaboration, they feel that they generate more ideas and create a more complex text than when working alone. Listening to one another leads to the generation of additional content and stronger arguments in their essays. Similarly, students appreciate a more structured way of working because when working collaboratively, they create an online together before starting to write, which facilitates the joint planning of the task and division of the work. In fact, students also feel that they write at a higher level when working collaboratively and learning from each other. Students also see the benefits of a multimodal approach to the writing task. For example, the use of voice chats can be very useful for the exchange of ideas when developing the content and overall structure. Similarly, students found that generating and sharing ideas with a group on the discussion boards offer a useful opportunity to discuss multiple possible ideas and arguments for the essay. To conclude, the proliferation and increasing sophistication of social tools is leading to the increasing inclusion of collaborative writing in the second language classroom. This collaboration has the potential for developing knowledge, linguistic skills, and composition in a co-constructive manner not always easily achieved through individual writing. Finally, collaboration will be an increasingly important element in students' professional and personal lives in the future. So, as instructors, we need to develop pedagogical methods that will match the demands of the outside world.